10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us. 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Muraki on your TV, online and on your radio, all the way through until midday. Massive show to kickstart your week today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about the Archbishop of Wokery, of course, sticking his all into proceedings, drugs in sport, and the latest from Ukraine, amongst many other things.
Yes, indeed. And get in touch with your views, as usual, on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll try and get to as many as we can throughout the show. But first, let's give you the headlines.
A very good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Now, the Home Secretary has challenged critics of her plan to send migrants to Rwanda to come up with a better idea. Writing a joint article in The Times with the Rwandan Foreign Minister, Priti Patel reiterated that her controversial plans were in fact bold and innovative. It's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals were ungodly and raised serious ethical questions. Dover and Deal MP Natalie Elfinky told GB News people in her constituency demand action and that this new policy will provide people with a safe place of refuge.
Rwanda has experience in this, it has capacity, it has opportunity, it wants to help people set up a new life in Rwanda. So that seems to me to be a really important point, that people will be given the opportunity to set up a new life. They will be supported. They'll be supported by the British taxpayer.
The Prime Minister is said to be getting ready to defend his premiership in front of Parliament this week. It will be Boris Johnson's first appearance in the Commons since he and the Chancellor were fined for a gathering held in the Cabinet Room in June 2020. Boris Johnson's expected to urge MPs to move on from Partygate, insisting there are bigger issues to focus on. Conservative MP Greg Hands told GB News Boris Johnson is looking forward to being questioned by MPs after the Easter recess.
The fact that he has apologised, he's paid the fine, he's expressed regret at what has happened, but equally I think he wants to outline how he's getting on with the job and how the government is getting on with the job. But I'm sure he's relishing the chance to be back in the Commons explaining to MPs.
In international news now, Russia has renewed its assault on western and southern regions of Ukraine. Lviv's mayor says at least 6 people have been killed after 5 missile strikes hit the city overnight. Yesterday, Ukrainian soldiers ignored a Russian ultimatum to lay down arms in the besieged port city of Mariupol. The country's deputy prime minister says for the second day in a row, no evacuation corridors have been opened. Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging Western countries to offer more military and financial support.
We are doing everything to ensure our defence, and we are grateful to those who really help with everything they can. But to those who have the weapons and ammunition we need but delay their provision, must know that the fate of this battle also depends on them. The fate of people who can be saved. Every delay in weapons, every political delay, is a permission for Russia to take the lives of Ukrainians.
The final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are being lifted today. There is no longer a legal requirement to wear a face mask on public transport and in indoor public spaces. From today, the rules move to guidance only. Free lateral flow devices will no longer be available for routine testing, but will continue for clinical care, health and social care workers and for people visiting vulnerable individuals in care homes and hospitals. Scotland's First Minister has been reported to the police after footage posted on social media appeared to show her not wearing a mask indoors while visiting a barber's. Well, Nicola Sturgeon posted a video on Twitter of that visit in question. In it, she is wearing a mask as she shaves a man's beard during the council election campaign trail. An SNP spokesperson said the First Minister was invited into the barber's during an outdoor visit on the street. Within a few seconds, she realised she hadn't put her mask back on and immediately put it on. Volunteers are being lined up to drive ambulances as the backlog of patients continues to grow. It's part of a pilot scheme due to launch next month. London Ambulance Service says volunteers are going to be trained and equipped to offer support with emergency calls in their area. Figures last week showed that response times and A&E performance in England has dropped to its lowest level on record. Thousands of volunteers who joined the COVID vaccination programme have now got permanent jobs in the NHS. Well, new NHS figures show over 11,000 people who helped deliver jabs have decided to stay in the National Health Service. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, says it's a positive boost to the health service, which is struggling with staff shortages and a huge backlog caused by the pandemic. You're up to date here on GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head to the point.
A very good Easter Monday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. It's 10:06 and we're on your TV, radio and online. And we've got another great show lined up for you to kickstart your Monday. So here's what's coming up.
Right, well, Ukrainian fighters in the besieged city of Mariupol ignored Russian threats to surrender. The war in Ukraine shows no signs of slowing down. We'll actually be going live to Ukraine to talk to a member of Parliament about the latest developments in the conflict over there.
Yes, and back here in the UK, Parliament is back in action. Tomorrow, MPs are set to return back to Westminster after their Easter recess, and our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, will join us to see what's on the agenda in this week in Westminster.
Yes, and the final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are lifted today. Face masks in public places and on public transport are no longer a legal requirement. Our Scotland correspondent, David Donaldson, will give us the latest on all of that.
Yes, that's all coming up and much, much more as well, as usual, across the programme. And get in touch with your views as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. But first, Patrick's going to give his views on the UK's migration deal with Rwanda.
It's time for the people who are opposed to the Rwanda asylum scheme to come up with a workable alternative or shut up and get on board with it. This weekend, we saw an astonishing intervention from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who essentially branded the scheme ungodly. I personally think that continuing with a system that turns people smugglers into multi-millionaires and leads to women and children drowning in the busiest shipping lane in the world is pretty ungodly. Where in the Bible does it say that we must have open borders? The fact is, our current approach isn't working. It's unsustainable and changes simply had to be made. And if the Archbishop is being honest, I suspect he actually doesn't really believe in borders at all and would happily welcome anybody who wants to move to the UK and allow them to stay here forever. But there appears to be a bit of a mental block, I think, when it comes to the reality of the situation. Those calling this inhumane and unethical seem to all have the view that every single one of the people coming across the channel is fleeing war and that they're genuine asylum seekers. In reality, many of them deliberately destroy their passports so we can't tell where they're from and have travelled through numerous safe countries before paying a people smuggler thousands of pounds to come to England, i.e. many are economic migrants. The people who claim this new policy is unethical should consider the ethics of the current situation. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis and the taxpayer is forking out around £4.6 million a day to put these people up in hotels. The Home Office is also going to start commandeering private rental properties across the country, meaning that people who've been on a housing waiting list could find themselves homeless for longer, and low-income families, crucially, will be priced out of the market. Is that ethical? People will mention the cost of the Rwanda scheme, of course they will, but I think that kind of misses the point. It's supposed to be a deterrent, isn't it? It's an initial outlay that is designed to save us a lot of money in the future. But it's not just Boris Johnson and Priti Patel who have to take responsibility for this policy. Frankly, it's those on the opposition benches as well. Sir Keir Starmer hasn't got a solution, has he? He hasn't suggested an alternative. Why? Well, because he hasn't got one, and neither does anyone else. It's always easier to make somebody else make a decision and then criticise it afterwards. But that's not leadership, is it? I think people criticising this scheme need to be honest with us all. A, in their heart of hearts, do they actually believe in complete open borders and unlimited migration? Because if so, then they criticise any policy, wouldn't they? And frankly, their idea is unworkable. Or B, have they got a better idea? If the answer to that first question is yes, and the second question is no, then they should just pipe down. Yeah, interesting intervention by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen him intervening in political matters. We saw him have seen him intervening in Brexit. We have seen him giving his own opinion in relation to coronavirus, as well as the restrictions there. Look, I fundamentally don't think he should be opining on politics, because not only is it not the church's role to do that, and some might argue that it is their position, you know, they have to comment on social things going on, but these are things that are clearly political decisions.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel uncomfortable that there might be people in the church who go to church regularly, Church of England members, who perhaps do agree with this policy, as many people do, and are now feeling a bit isolated and now feeling they can't be truthful and express their views. So I think he should just really kind of roll it back and stop intervening so much.
Yeah, I think the implication there is anyone who agrees with this scheme is ungodly as well, or is unethical. And that's a massive, massive problem for me personally. And I also do think, as I said earlier on, if he's going to say this stuff, he needs to be honest with us about what his personal view is. Now, I don't know, obviously, because he hasn't told us, but I strongly suspect that the Archbishop of Canterbury would have open borders and basically unlimited migration and be, you know, and have everyone here. Well, if that's the case, then he needs to be honest about that, because he needs to put his view on. He can't just say, well, you know, this whole thing's ungodly and unsustainable. But actually, if that really is his view, because he would have a complete open border system, then he needs to be honest about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the crux of the issue. If you don't agree with this policy, well, then put forward a policy and put forward an alternative for the Home Office to consider, perhaps. But moving on from that, something, of course, the Home Office has also been considering is refugees coming from Ukraine. The situation there is, of course, still ongoing. And 5 missile strikes have been reported in the western city of Lviv this morning, while air raid sirens were heard in Kiev and several other parts of Ukraine, while President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has invited French President Emmanuel Macron to visit the country to see for himself the acts of, quote, genocide committed by Russian forces. Russian troops are also reportedly issuing movement passes to those who remain in the besieged city of Mariupol.
But a second former British soldier has been captured in the city, where Ukrainian resistance continues to hold out against Russian forces. Now, member of Ukrainian Parliament, Alexei Goncharenko, joins us now. Thank you very much, Alexei, fast becoming a regular on this show and on this station. We're very grateful to have you. Thank you. What's the current situation for you then over there?
The current situation is tough. The war is continuing. Russia is attacking now, concentrating on the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. Now I'm in Odessa, which is my native city and my constituency region. But yesterday I was in Mykolaiv, which is a neighbor to Odessa, another port on Black Sea, and there are big fightings near Mykolaiv, and the city is shelled and bombed. We see that Putin is continuing the war and continuing to terrorize people by missile attacks, by bombings, and especially difficult situation, the worst situation is in Mariupol, where Ukrainian fighters are continuing to fight and they refuse to surrender, and that is absolutely heroical. But what is the problem? That many civilians in the city, they don't have a possibility to leave the city, to save their lives, to come to safety. And Russia is just destroying and flattening the city and raising it to ruins, to the ground.
Explain to us what these movement passes are. We mentioned there that Russian troops are reportedly issuing these passes to those who remain in the city of Mariupol. Is this a true story? Because it does seem somewhat unlikely given the behaviour of Russian troops so far.
Yeah, but they announced that yesterday they propose to Ukrainian fighters to lay down the weapons But first of all, they don't want to. They're fighting, and they want to fight for our cities and land more. And it's absolutely something that I admire of. But also, we know the history of 2014, because this war is lasting for more than 8 years already. But the last escalation before February 24th year was in 2014-15. And in 2014, in Ilovaisk, which is in the eastern part of Ukraine, not far from Mariupol, by the way, there was also encirclement of Ukrainian forces, and Russian army proposed them a corridor to leave. They agreed to leave Ilovaisk, and after this they were shot down and shelled in this corridor, and a big number of Ukrainian soldiers and officers were killed absolutely by this barbarian act. So there is no any faith in Russians, in their word, and that is also one of the reasons why there are no any changes in Mariupol. So I think that what is the best option is that world by sanctions will make Russia to stop their operation at all in Ukraine and also in Mariupol. That will save thousands of lives, and that is the best solution.
Okay, and what do we expect Russia to do now? Are they regrouping? Are they going to try and attack key targets in the east? That's what we seem to be hearing over here.
Yes, they are regrouping. They are concentrating forces in east and south of Ukraine and planning to continue their attack and planning to continue this war and will continue in destroying infrastructure and bombing the cities, trying to cause more humanitarian catastrophe. For example, in Mykolaiv, which I have been visited yesterday, for already 5 or 6 days there is no water because Russia destroyed centralized water supply system of Mykolaiv, and people, thousands of them, because Mykolaiv is a big city, 500,000 population before the invasion, now probably 300,000-400,000 people. They just need to stay in lines to receive some water. So it's a humanitarian catastrophe there. And that is Russian style of war. Humanitarian catastrophe, war crimes, devastations, terrorizing of the civilians.
Yeah, is there a real sense that the Russians are trying to starve you out?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Is there a real sense that the Russians are trying to starve the people into submission, to reduce the food supplies, to reduce water supplies?
Yeah, absolutely. They did it near Kiev. They attacked food stores and they are attacking water supply. I mean, Mariupol, people are already for 6 weeks without water supply, electricity, any connection, and so on. So yes, it's their way of making war, absolutely barbarian, with the awful war crimes, using cassid bombs and things like this. So they don't have any red lines. So I think they should be punished for this, to show other countries that it is impossible to act this way. So more sanctions should be imposed on Russia, more weapons Ukraine should receive to stop this awful behavior.
Absolutely. Look, thank you again, Alexei, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And good luck to you all, OK? Alexei Goncharenko, they're a member of parliament in Ukraine. He's based in Odessa, but he's travelling all over the country and reporting for us on what he sees.
Yeah, I mean, I think this war, I never thought, I suppose, in my youth, I'd say I'm relatively still young, I would see the kinds of things that are going on at the moment. I mean, I know war goes on all the time, but there's something about this particular war, as opposed to all the other wars that have gone on in my lifetime, that feels so close to home and feels so visible and so visceral. I mean, maybe it's because we are seeing footage of the sorts of crimes that are being committed and hearing really, really graphic detail about what's going on there. But it's just abhorrent, all of it. Yeah,
and I think it just all seems so pointless. You know, if there'd been massive issues, for a while there, but basically Russia wants more territory, right? That's what it is, and that it seems like a very Yeah, it just seems like the whole thing's very, very pointless when you look at it all, and it is very hard, certainly, to defend anything that Putin is doing. But anyway, now, ladies and gentlemen, this Wednesday, the 20th of April, we need your help. We are once again handing our show over to you.
Yes, we want you to tell us about what to talk about, what you think are the most important stories. It was a success last week with so many of you getting in touch. We're really grateful for that. So we're doing it all over again this week. So what we're asking you is to tell us the subjects that you think need covering. I think last week we did grooming gangs.
All sorts.
Yeah, we had an eclectic mix of topics. What questions do you want answering? Who do you think we should be talking to? Email us all your stories at tothepoint@gbnews.uk. So not our usual email, please, not GBV's email. Email directly to tothepoint@gbnews.uk with those stories.
Yes, indeed. Right, well, after the break, we'll be joined by our political correspondent Tom Harwood and our Scotland reporter David Donaldson as we look ahead to the return of Parliament and discuss the fallout from the Rwanda deal, the cost of living crisis and mask mandates finally coming to an end in Scotland, even if Nicola Sturgeon did end it for herself a little bit before then anyway. But we have the weather, I believe, so looking ahead to today's weather. And the UK is looking bright for many of us with a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. Southwest England will see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers through Easter Monday morning, and it'll be feeling fresher with temperatures reaching around 13 degrees Celsius. There'll be plenty of sunshine and dry weather for the London area and the southeast of England, with temperatures reaching 14 degrees Celsius by lunchtime. Practically tropical, isn't it? Wales will also see a mixture of sunny spells and showers. These could be very heavy towards the coast, feeling pleasant in the sunshine though. And over we go now to the Midlands, and it will be mostly dry, but for a few light showers are possible, and mainly they will be located around the Birmingham area. Temperatures rising a little above average for this time of year. Showers in northern England, no shock there, is it, this morning? And on the heavy side from time to time, in between, there will be plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant with light winds. And up we go now to Orkney and Shetland, which will see some early rain. Otherwise, much of Scotland will be bathed in sunshine, but there will be the odd shower. Breezy in the north and west. And off we pop now to Northern Ireland. A brighter day for Northern Ireland compared to yesterday. There will be plenty of sunny spells, but also the risk of some showers too. Highs of around 12 degrees Celsius. Through the day, most places will stay bright, but further scattered showers are possible. It'll be breezy in the northwest.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's 10:24. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys. I'm Mercy Muroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, well, after just under 3 weeks of parliamentary recess, tomorrow the House is scheduled to return from the Easter break. The Prime Minister and his government will be bracing themselves as they're set to face questions about Partygate, fixed penalty notices, the cost of living crisis, the contentious Rwandan migrant deal, and alarming reports as well from the Sunday Times that 56 MPs are currently subject to complaints about sexual harassment.
Well, lots to get stuck into here, isn't there? So let's throw it over to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Thank you very much, Tom. Difficult to know where to start, really. I mean, I think, can we start with the claims that 56 MPs are apparently facing, scrutiny, I suppose, over sexual misconduct? Just run us through that, please.
Yes, well, this is obviously not MPs who have been found to have done something wrong. This is MPs who have complaints against them, and the two aren't always exactly the same. There are MPs who have been cleared of impropriety in the past, but also, as we know, there are a significant number of MPs of all parties who have been found to have been behaving really not well at all. Indeed, some members of the House of Lords as well. This is all rolling on from when this scandal first started to stir up back in 2016-2017. It was known as Pestminster at the time, and it really encompassed everything from a hand on a knee to things that really got a lot more serious. And it really came in the wake of the global Me Too movement. There was a big question over how people behaved in the media, in the top of business, but also in our politics too.
Can I just... I binged a couple of nights ago, I binged this new Netflix series called Anatomy of a Scandal, which is very much about this issue. An MP being sexually inappropriate with his aide. It's a drama, of course, it's not a documentary, but it gave me the impression that more and more is known about this kind of thing. I know many female friends, for example, who have or do work in Parliament who are very aware of some sketchy things that goes on. Have we done enough to address this kind of thing? Because it's almost widely known that sometimes a lot of powerful people can be inappropriate.
Well, that you've exactly put the nail on the head there, because when we're looking at the relationship between how MPs and their staff and other people in Parliament operate, it's almost like it's not one workplace at all. It's 650 smaller businesses without a real proper structure of how it should work, because ultimately that's what it is. You can't have an MP really being accountable to a power other than their constituents, because of course a member of Parliament isn't an employee of the House in that way. They are a member of the House and a representative for the people they represent, and they run their offices as if they're sort of mini businesses. So they're the head of that small food chain, and so it's sometimes a difficult way to sort of work out how HR can work properly in that environment. But of course, as we were saying, across many sectors of life, particularly where powerful people and people who perhaps weren't powerful and suddenly find themselves in positions of power, sometimes they can abuse that situation, and that is what we have seen time and time again in our politics.
Yeah, what are we expecting the reaction to be from the opposition benches about this Rwanda deal? Because I suppose Boris Johnson has a ready-made response, which is, where's your idea then?
That's certainly true. Ultimately, if you believe that the United Kingdom should have some sort of border control, if you don't think that people should be able to walk in completely freely, if you don't believe in open borders, then you do need a way to enforce your lack of open borders, your controlled immigration system. And ultimately, it seems like a lot of the people criticising the Rwanda plan are almost to some extent arguing for completely open borders, because they don't have an answer for what people coming across the channel, what should be done with those people other than being welcomed in. Well, that means we don't have an immigration system in effect. So yes, the government does have a strong argument there. However, on the other hand, the Labour Party will say that there aren't enough safe legal routes for people to come through as things stand. And what tends to happen is if you don't have those legal routes, people are often more ingenious than governments and find their own ways round. So whilst there are migrant processing centres, some now in France dealing specifically with the Ukrainian issue, indeed many in those countries bordering Ukraine as well, and we know that the UK goes out to those camps in the Middle East for Syrian refugees and indeed has a specific programme for Afghan refugees too. When it comes to general processing for people fleeing conflict or oppression anywhere in the world, it doesn't seem like the UK has those general processing centres where anyone can turn up.
Yeah.
The way that they can claim asylum in the UK is by getting into the UK, and the way they get into the UK is more often than not illegally. So there is an argument there, a legitimate argument from the opposition benches, that there should be more of those general processing centres offshore so that people can come to a place in continental Europe perhaps and get in without having to break into the country.
Yeah, and I suppose that would almost do the opposite of what the government wants. They want to sort of discourage people from coming here, don't they? And I suppose that would encourage, I mean, the amount of people applying would be huge, and it wouldn't be incredibly difficult to process all those people. But anyway, moving on to something much more important, I think, to many people across this country, the cost of living crisis. A poll has come out that 4 in 5 Britons believe Boris Johnson is out of touch on inflation, on the cost of living. Not figures he's going to be very pleased with, is he?
Certainly not. This is a problem that is affecting all countries across the Western world. The UK has incredibly high inflation, the highest in 30 years right now, but it's lower than the inflation in Germany, in Spain, in the United States and across the Eurozone average. Only France is one of those major countries that has lower inflation than the UK right now, and that's majorly because they have a pretty solid energy generation system based on nuclear power rather than on oil and gas, as we do, and we know the prices of those have shot up in recent months. Really, this is a very tricky problem that is facing countries the world over, that many politicians are being blamed for, but is indeed a global effect. However, there is the legitimate argument that if we have had 2 years, which we have had, where the government has been printing a lot of money, has been having a very easy credit policy, a lot of money has been sloshing around the system, that does affect inflation. That will inevitably have an effect on demand pull inflation. Of course, there's cost push inflation as well, and there are various quirks of the international trading system with regard to countries coming out and going back into lockdown and everything that affects as well. But clearly, inflation is a big issue, and potentially one that the Bank of England and the government didn't see coming soon enough.
Tom, thank you very much as ever. Tom Harwood, our political correspondent. Right, well, after the break, a new report says that several footballers failed drugs tests, but nothing was done about it. How widespread is doping in football, and what are the authorities going to do about it? But before that, here's this morning's news.
A very good morning. It's 10:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. The Home Secretary says critics of her plan to send migrants to Rwanda have failed to offer their own solutions. Writing a joint article in The Times with the Rwandan Foreign Minister, Priti Patel reiterated that her controversial plans were bold and innovative. Well, it's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals were ungodly and that they raised serious ethical questions. The Prime Minister is going to face MPs in the Commons tomorrow in his first appearance since he and the Chancellor were both fined for a gathering held in the Cabinet Room in June 2020. He's expected to urge MPs to move on from Partygate, insisting there are bigger issues to focus on. Russia has renewed its assault on western and southern regions in Ukraine. Lviv's mayor says at least 6 people have been killed after 5 missile strikes hit the city overnight. The country's Deputy Prime Minister says for the second day in a row, no evacuation corridors have been opened. The final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are being lifted today. People will no longer be legally required to wear face masks on public transport or in indoor public spaces. From today, the rules move to guidance instead. Lateral flow tests will no longer be freely available, but they will continue for health and social care workers and for those visiting vulnerable people in care homes or hospitals. Volunteers are being lined up to drive ambulances as part of a pilot scheme due to launch next month. London Ambulance Service says volunteers will be trained and equipped to offer support with emergency calls in their area. Well, new figures last week show response times and A&E performance in England has dropped to its lowest level on record. You're up to date. We're on your TV, online and your DAB+ radio. Shortly, we'll be back to The Point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Moroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now the final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland have been lifted today, as wearing face masks in public places and on public transport are no longer a legal requirement. Although the restrictions have been removed, the Scottish Government still urges Scots to continue wearing face masks.
Yes, well, it comes after Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon was actually reported to the police for not wearing a mask when visiting a shop in South Lanarkshire. Well, our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, joins us now with more on this. Thank you very much, Davy. So, gosh, bad news for Nicola Sturgeon, is it?
Yeah, it certainly appears that way. The first video Nicola Sturgeon put out herself on social media, on Twitter, it did show her not wearing a mask for a couple of seconds and then rectifying that by putting a mask on. However, since then, other footages have emerged at this barber shop in East Kilbride near Glasgow, where she clearly isn't wearing a mask. That's what it certainly appears to look like, and that's been reported to police. So, yeah, it looks like it could be a breach of the rules, and you have to say the timing of it as well. You know, just the day, 2 days before we no longer have to wear masks as law, it's guidance, and I'm sure some people will continue to wear them, but it's really, really bad timing. The Scottish Conservatives have come out and called it blatant hypocrisy. The Lib Dems have also had a go as well, saying she's in breach of her own rules. So, yeah, it's really, the spotlight's certainly been shined on Nicola Sturgeon, and we'll see what happens with this. But this comes obviously today, as I said there, that people in Scotland no longer have to wear masks on trains and public places, i.e. pubs, restaurants, etc. So I'm sure that'll be a relief to many, but certainly from what I've seen today, I was down at the Lithgow train station earlier and some people were still wearing them. And I think they will continue to still wear them, but yeah, as for Nicola Sturgeon, this one's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yes, and some will say it just shows how ridiculous the rules were in the first place. I mean, reporting somebody for not wearing a mask, I do sort of think, get a life. to be honest.
Probably does, but then at the same time,
hypocrisy.
you know, I do quite enjoy the fact Sturgeon's been reported to the police.
Yes. Now, Davey, are people worried about rising cases? Obviously, especially the vulnerable, they'll be saying, actually, this hasn't changed anything for me. You know, coronavirus, the risk of coronavirus hasn't changed. So some people will be very worried about this change.
Yeah, a lot of people will be worried about, you know, the numbers in Scotland still being very high. I think we've got 2,000 cases the other day, so certainly some people will be very, very wary about this. And of course, we've all seen new strains of it, so again, there's nothing to stop something like that happening, and we're back to square one. I'm sure we all wish that not to happen. I think in Scotland there's been a real feeling, you know, that we're 3 months behind England in terms of the face masks. A lot of people feel here that, you know, we should have followed suit a little bit sooner afterwards, and why are we still having to wear face masks? And I suppose the laughable situation that some people see is when they're in a bar or restaurant and not wearing it when they're sitting down, and then having to wear it when they go to the toilet. So, which a lot of people see really doesn't make much of a difference. But that was the law. Of course, the law's not enforced, and I'm sure a lot of restaurants and cafes like the one here over my shoulder in Linlithgow will be very, very happy that the law is changed now and it's for guidance. And as I say, you will still get people quite within their own right, and it's obviously up to the individual to wear the mask, but I think we will see a lot of people not bothering.
Absolutely. David, thank you very much. David Johnson there, our Scotland reporter, discussing, I suppose, the end of the final COVID restrictions in Scotland, and also the fact that Nicola Sturgeon's been reported to the police. Well, there we are. Anyway, now, we've covered before the potentially dangerous environment awaiting expectant mothers in our NHS maternity wards. After a shortage of more than 2,000 midwives means that women and babies remain at risk of unsafe care.
Yes, well, now a new investigation claims that sodium valproate, a drug known for decades to cause disabilities in babies, was still being prescribed to pregnant mothers. Jeremy Hunt, the former, as opposed to pregnant fathers, of course.
Well, yes,
Jeremy
of course,
Hunt, the former Health Secretary and current chair of the Health and Social Care Committee, said, quote, "The families impacted by this scandal have faced the most egregious injustice, and it's time the British state faced up to its responsibilities, just as we eventually did the victims of the thalidomide scandal."
Yeah, he also called for the drug to be banned from being prescribed to pregnant women. So with all things considered, is it still safe to have a baby in the United Kingdom? Well, joining us now to talk about this is Nagme Tamurian-Yates, a midwife of over 40 years. Thank you very much for hot-footing it into the studio as well. We'll get stuck in. Is it safe to have a baby in the UK?
I'm actually going to say yes, it is. Because public are vulnerable at the moment, especially with the situation of Shrewsbury and Telford. So I go with my practice that when I work, when I'm in my department, we are safe. Women are safe.
OK.
Staff may not feel safe with respect of shortage of staff, because that is massive. And of course, it's the funding. We don't have enough equipments. If you don't have enough equipments, you won't be able to see to somebody immediately. But as a whole, I'm actually going to say, yes, you are safe.
Okay.
Yes, and I mean, I certainly felt very safe, and I acknowledge many women don't, but I can't speak highly enough of the midwives that looked after me when I was having my baby. But back to this, the point of this new scandal, so to speak. I mean, I am increasingly feeling like the medical profession really doesn't care as much as it should about women and mothers, because we have yet another scandal involving sort of medication being given to mothers, which has been shown to cause disabilities. I mean, we thought this would end with thalidomide.
I am actually shocked that they are still at times using the sodium valproate. I haven't actually, in my practice, used it, perhaps I would say, for about 20 years, 15, 20 years, because they are now using Keppra, which is the alternative to sodium valproate. But I have had one patient who, that was 31 and a half years ago, who was on sodium valproate, and that child has got the fetal valproate syndrome, unfortunately. But they are now on Keppra. In my experience, all the ladies are on Keppra, but of course the GPs and the maternity services have got to be aware that any woman of childbearing age should not be on sodium valproate.
Okay.
So, of course, if somebody was on sodium valproate and they suddenly do become unexpectedly pregnant.
And what exactly does that drug or medication do? What's its purpose originally?
It's an anticonvulsant, so it's used for patients with, or ladies or anybody with epilepsy.
Okay.
But at one point, they decided that if you were on a certain dosage, they should have, which it was a high dose of 1 gram in the day, they should have just split it so it was in regular intervals. But now they do use Keppra instead.
Okay.
And so what should women do? So say if somebody's pregnant now and they see these sorts of stories, they see that so many maternity wards are rated inadequate or requires improvement, they see scandals like this still emerging, they see child deaths, unnecessary inquiries into sort of unnecessary child deaths and disabilities and things like that. And there'll be a lot of mothers who are worried and almost feel reluctant to go and see a doctor or reluctant to perhaps go on certain medication. What would be your advice for those people?
My advice for any lady who, number one, who is epileptic, if they are on sodium valproate, to go back to their GP and to make sure that they take them off sodium valproate. So if they are, the guidance is if they are of childbearing age, they should not be on sodium valproate.
Okay.
If they do suddenly find that they are pregnant, is an unplanned pregnancy, can they please discuss it with their obstetrician, midwife or GP immediately so they can then put them under robust antenatal care to be monitored.
Absolutely, and obviously if you are watching us at home or listening to us on the radio or indeed online, then, you know, if you have any concerns, then do consult your GP, obviously. But just finally, I'd like to ask you something. You said about a shortage of staff, or a shortage of midwives. Now, it must be an incredibly rewarding job at times, and you've done it now for 40 years, is that right?
I've done it for 42 years.
42 years?
In February.
Goodness gracious me. Well, there you go. So, come on, sell it to people, because we need more midwives, we need more people like you.
Oh, I would sell it. How long have you got for me to sell it? It is genuinely the most wonderful, the most amazing job one can ever do. I actually feel honoured and privileged to have been there alongside of the women, their families and the staff for these 42 years, because I wouldn't have had this rich life I have now if I didn't do this job. It's incredible. It's mouth-watering. And it's every shift, every day, with every woman. Everything is different.
Yeah.
This is not a job that every day is the same.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Unbelievable.
I'd say you nearly brought a tear to my eye there. Goodness me. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for... Oh, there you go. Well, that was lovely, and you will have to have you back on the show. And thank you, you know, on behalf...
You're so bright and cheery. I mean, it's brightened my day.
Absolutely. You can come back. You can come back anytime you like. Thank you very much. Now, great to Maureen Yates, who was a midwife for 42 years, just recently retired. Thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show. Right, we're going to go to some of your views now. GB views at gbnews.uk. Let's delve into the terrifying world of my inbox. As you can imagine, loads about the Rwanda issue. The Archbishop of Canterbury's comments as well, saying basically that it was ungodly, essentially. A lot of people just saying, look, you should stick to religion and stay out of politics.
Yes, well, Stephen here has a very good point. He says the church is very rich. Why doesn't the church give more assistance for once the government is doing the right thing? So I did have a look at how much the Church of England actually has in terms of money. It says here has a large endowment of £8.7 billion, which generates approximately £1 billion a year in income. That's 2019 figures. So, I mean, look, there's a point here. Lots of people like to pipe up and, you know, virtue signal a lot. Well, you do something. You do something about it. You do more if you think the government isn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is it. And just one more quick one before we move on to our next guest. Patrick, if it is, as you say, that councils have been instructed to rent private rentals to these asylum seekers, immigrants, etc., then this is outrageous. What about our homeless and the people waiting for accommodation? And that's from Linda. And that's a really good point. You know, if the Home Office actually is going to be going in and commandeering private rental stock at the lower end of the private rental sector, then people who are towards the lower incomes are going to be priced out, potentially. The housing stock will be diminished and people on housing waiting lists won't be able to get those houses. So, yes, there are certainly issues there. But from one problem to another. How seriously are sports authorities taking cheating in the game? And no, we're not talking about dodgy VAR decisions. A new report says that at least 15 Premier League footballers failed drugs tests between 2015 and 2020, although no one apparently has been given any kind of ban.
Yes, well, the revelations came after a series of freedom of information requests by the Mail on Sunday. Apparently, a total of 88 footballers from England, Wales and Scotland failed doping tests between 2013 and 2020. However, no action actually appears to have been taken.
Well, joining us now is sports journalist and broadcaster, legend of the game, some would say, Aidan McGee. Thank you very much for coming in. I think a lot of people are very confused by this. So you fail the drug test, so you don't get banned.
Yeah, it's not quite as simple as that, though, Patrick, because sometimes these substances can have a dual use. So, for example, if we think back to Bradley Wiggins when he failed at, well, it wasn't really a failed drugs test, they called it an adverse analytical finding. It's the new sort of terminology for a failed test, but he actually had a therapeutic use exemption, a TUE, which meant that he was actually having treatment for something else, and a byproduct of that treatment was that it produced a sample which was adverse, as we said, or a failed test. So my concern, though, is when I look down this list, if we take the Premier League players in isolation, 15 in total, I mean, Ritalin is a very dangerous drug in terms of, you know, what it can do to well, not necessarily dangerous, but it can give you a burst of strength and power when you're kind of running through on goal, if you like, you know, but it's also treated for ADHD. I'd love to know how many players really generally thought they had a problem with ADHD, or whether they actually took it for this purpose, or a more sinister purpose. But there's another one as well, indapamide. I mean, that's used for weight loss, right? But it's also a masking agent. If there's a masking agent on this list, I think it needs to be out there. It needs to be someone we need to identify who's taking it. We need to know there's a sanction. Cocaine as well. I mean, there's absolutely no excuse for that to be in football, used in football. So I think that should be out as well. But there's other ones where, you know, there's one of the kids was 15 years old, right? So there are safeguarding issues. So it's not cut and dried. The other issue, the wider issue, is that football's powers that be, or the powers of authorities within football, they have to be very, very, very careful about inviting any kind of interaction with drugs into their sport, because the repercussions can be felt further down the line. You look at cycling, for example. I was working for Sky about 5-6 years ago when, probably more recently than that, actually, Comcast took over, and they were thinking, well, look, you've got Team Sky, they're spending £38 million a year on this. They only think of one name when they think of cycling, that's Lance Armstrong. And they got out of it straight away, and they ended that association. Cycling, we don't hear as much of it now as we did 10 years ago. Look at athletics as well. I mean, the gladiatorial competitors when I was growing up, John Regis, Liz McColgan, Sally Gunnell, Chris Akabusi, Jonathan Edwards, all these people. Now, I'm not associating them with drugs in any way, shape or form, but I'm saying they were super famous, and yet now we don't hear about them or hear about any of those athletics, because, apart from the Olympics, because the broadcasters and the sponsors just pulled away quietly, stealthily, because they knew that the viewers could not guarantee the sanctity of those races. We were watching 100 metres finals, and we've done it several times, haven't we? We're thinking, gold, silver, bronze, but what about if he gets done for drugs? Yeah, exactly. A bit later down the line. And that's the problem. If football invites that with the number of broadcasting deals and the multi-million pound, football's by far and away the biggest sport in the world. The broadcasting deal in this country alone is worth £5 billion over 3 seasons. They cannot play with fire. So that's the broadest term. Also, before we go on to the next bit, I would just say that look at the influence of drugs in football. I wouldn't say it's a problem. We're talking about 88 players here across the board. You know, thousands of players have played in the last 7 years, so it's not a huge problem. But also, it's what influence do drugs have in football? I was always told 15, 20 years ago, well, it's not the same as athletics or cycling, because, you know, no drug is going to help you bend a ball around the wall to take a free kick, or no drug is going to help you produce a defence-splitting pass from deep. But it's all about endurance. What about those goals that are scored in a 6 minute of added time? Players are fitter than ever. So endurance, most of these substances are about endurance, helping you go for longer. That's why tennis has a problem with some drugs, because it invites scrutiny, because you're seeing these marathon 5-setters in Australia in 40-degree heat, and you're seeing players being able to undertake that quite easily, whereas 20 years ago the conditioning didn't allow them to do that. So it's a murky area, and I think also that football has to come to terms. If there is a case, they need to come out and say it, because I don't really know why some of these substances are not on the list. I don't know why the sanctions haven't been issued, and they haven't named names.
Absolutely. Is there some truth to the fact that now there's such fine margins in elite level football? Oh, without question. And the amount of pressure on players is huge, and so actually they could have their heads turned by some of these drugs as well.
Without question. I mean, look, what does it say when you've got 15-year-olds taking dabbling in drugs? I mean, we don't actually know what that adverse finding was. I mean, it could have been an amphetamine or something from a night out, but if it's something more more serious, like indapamide, then, as we mentioned, it's a masking agent, then that should be outed straight away, because that was a big problem in athletics. They couldn't track down the dopers for a long time because they were using masking agents which hid all these substances. So the fine margins. Yeah, we're seeing cheating in general in a rise. I mean, in 10 years ago in rugby, the worst thing I've ever seen on a rugby pitch was when we had blood capsules.
Yes.
On there. Did you see that? I haven't seen anything as sneaky as that in years. But it's because the rewards are greater and people will take risks to try and achieve those rewards. And that's why this has got to be stamped on immediately. But I don't necessarily think it's endemic of a wider problem of drugs within sport. I really don't.
Look, thank you very, very much, Eddie. Great to have you on the show. As always, yes, I'll have to do it again very soon. Eddie McGee there. We'll be back on my Friday night show at some point soon, I hope.
Yeah, May the 6th, I think.
Hey, there he is. Right, good stuff. OK, well, right, we're going to go and do some views now. Then GB Views at gbnews.uk. Just a cheeky little plug. Someone has said that they have donated. Joan, thank you very much. So I've got a Just Giving page up at the minute, trying to raise money for Mind, mental health charity, in support of Nathan Dunn, who is walking from John O'Groats to Land's End barefoot to set a world record and try to raise money, obviously, for
And how many miles is that?
I can't remember now off the top of my head, but loads, basically. And it's the length of the country.
You need a foot spa after that.
He is.
Imagine.
I'm going to be walking some of it with him, and we'll be support. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'll just try to pick a nice squishy field or something. But anyway, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. That's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. It went live on Friday night. We're already at nearly £2,500. So thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, well, all the best with that. When is that due to take place?
That's going to take place. He starts walking on May the 4th, but it's going to take him about a month and a bit to do it. So it ties in, of course, with my epic weight loss journey. He deserves,
honestly, I know this is beyond the point, but he deserves a lifetime's worth of pedicures for the rest of his life from his local, therapy, beauty clinic.
Yes.
You would, wouldn't you? Because that's incredible.
Well, there won't be much left of his feet by the end of this, I think. But
get gangrene.
Yes. Obviously, look, it is just on a slightly serious note. Look, male mental health is something that's not spoken about enough. Every day, around 12 men take their own lives. It's the single biggest killer of men under 45. So if you can spare it, be very, very appreciative. You could just pop your hand in your pocket and donate. justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christie's. Let's save some lives, people.
Yes, indeed. Well, keep all your thoughts coming into us on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And remember, there's a separate email if you want to tell us what you want us to speak about on Wednesday, which is tothepoint@gbnews.uk. And after the break, we'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after this weather.
And the UK is looking bright for many of us, with a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. Southwest England will see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers through Easter Monday morning, and it'll be feeling fresher, with temperatures reaching around 13 degrees Celsius. There'll be plenty of sunshine and dry weather for the London area and the southeast of England, with temperatures reaching 14 degrees Celsius by lunchtime. Practically tropical, isn't it? Wales will also see a mixture of sunny spells and showers. These could be very heavy towards the coast, feeling pleasant in the sunshine, though. And over we go now to the Midlands, and it will be mostly dry, but for a few light showers are possible, and mainly they will be located around the Birmingham area. Temperatures rising a little above average for this time of year. Showers in northern England, no shock there, is it, this morning? And on the heavy side from time to time, in between, there will be plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant with light winds. And up we go now to Orkney and Shetland, which will see some early rain. Otherwise, much of Scotland will be bathed in sunshine, but there will be the odd shower. Breezy in the north and west. And off we pop now to Northern Ireland. A brighter day for Northern Ireland compared to yesterday. There will be plenty of sunny spells, but also the risk of some showers too. Highs of around 12 degrees Celsius. Through the day, most places will stay bright, but further scattered showers are possible. It'll be breezy in the northwest.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Moroki on your TV, radio, and online. We're with you all the way through until midday with a big show to kickstart your week. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, on GBViews at gbnews.uk, and we will very much tell you what's coming up after the latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. The Home Secretary has challenged critics of her plan to send migrants to Rwanda to come up with a better idea. Writing a joint article in The Times with the Rwandan Foreign Minister, Priti Patel reiterated that her plans were bold and innovative. It's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals were ungodly and raised serious ethical questions. Dover and Deal MP Natalie Elfenke told GB News people in her constituency are demanding action and that this new policy will provide people with a safe place of refuge.
Rwanda has experience in this, it has capacity, it has opportunity, it wants to help people set up a new life in Rwanda. So that seems to me to be a really important point, that people will be given the opportunity to set up a new life. They will be supported. They'll be supported by the British taxpayer.
The Prime Minister is going to face MPs in the Commons tomorrow in his first appearance since he and the Chancellor were fined for a gathering held in the Cabinet Room while lockdown restrictions were in place in June 2020. He's expected to urge MPs to move on from Partygate, insisting there are bigger issues to focus on. Well, Conservative MP Greg Hands told GB News Boris Johnson is looking forward to being questioned by MPs after the Easter recess.
The fact that he has apologised, he's paid the fine, he's expressed regret at what has happened, but equally, I think he wants to outline how he's getting on with the job and how the government is getting on with the job. But I'm sure he's relishing the chance to be back in the Commons explaining to MPs.
In international news now, Russia has renewed its assault on western and southern regions in Ukraine. Lviv's mayor says at least 6 people have been killed after 5 missile strikes hit the city overnight. Well, Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister says for the second day in a row, no evacuation corridors have been opened. A Ukrainian MP based in Odessa, Oleksiy Goncharo, told GB News Ukrainian soldiers have ignored a Russian ultimatum to lay down arms in the besieged port city of Mariupol.
The worst situation is in Mariupol, where Ukrainian fighters are continuing to fight and they refuse to surrender. And that is absolutely heroical. But What is the problem that many civilians in the city, they don't have a possibility to leave the city, to save their lives, to come to safety. And that is Russian style of war. Humanitarian catastrophe, war crimes, devastations, terrorizing of the civilians.
The final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are lifted today. There's no longer a legal requirement to wear a face mask on public transport and in indoor public places. From today, the rules move to guidance. Free lateral flow devices will no longer be available for routine testing, but they will continue for clinical care, health and social care workers, and for people visiting vulnerable individuals in hospital or in a care home. Scotland's First Minister has been reported to the police after footage posted on social media appeared to show her not wearing a mask indoors on Saturday. Well, Nicola Sturgeon posted a video on Twitter of that visit in question. In it, she is wearing a mask as she shaves a man's beard at a barber's during a council election campaign trail event. Well, an SNP spokesperson said the First Minister was invited into the barber's during an outdoor visit on a street. Within a few seconds, she realised she hadn't put her mask back on and immediately put it on. Thousands of volunteers who joined the COVID vaccination programme have now got permanent jobs in the NHS. New NHS figures show over 11,000 people who helped deliver jabs have decided to stay in the NHS. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, says that's a positive boost to the health service, which is struggling with staff shortages and a huge backlog caused by the pandemic. A Team UK competitor has won gold in the shot put at the Invictus Games. Lisa Johnston from Doncaster was in the army for 17 years as a medic. She developed a chronic pain condition and became an amputee in 2016. The mother of 3 boys said she wanted to show her children anything is possible. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex congratulated and embraced her on the track. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you anything as it happens. Now, let's return to the point.
Well, good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. We're on your TV, radio and online, and we've got another great hour lined up for you to tell you all the latest news and lots of interesting discussions coming up as well.
Absolutely. Well, senior ministers have hit back at the Archbishop of Canterbury after he used an Easter Sunday service to attack the government's asylum plan following last week's deal with Rwanda. We'll be speaking to a former special advisor to the Home Office in just a few minutes.
Yes, and a poll from Opinion found 27% of minority ethnic workers said their employers had introduced new initiatives during the last 12 months in response to the global movement. The BLM movement will be asking, are these initiatives actually helping?
And the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge led yesterday's Easter Sunday service in Windsor after the Queen said she would not be attending due to health issues. It comes ahead of the monarch's 96th birthday on Tuesday, and our royal reporter, the wonderful Cameron Walker, will be giving us the latest.
Kate never doesn't look great. It's quite annoying, actually.
Yeah, although I suppose she does probably have a team of stylists.
Yeah, I know, but some people do, and they fail to look good as well.
That's true. That's very true. Anyway, we've got all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. Get in touch, as always, GBViews at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on naming a park after Diane Abbott.
Now, a Labour council could rename a park named after 4-time Prime Minister William Gladstone to Diane Abbott Park in its bid to, quote, tackle injustice. Following BLM protests last year, the local authority and its Labour leader Mohammed Butt asked school children to choose a new name for the park. And apparently, suggestions proposed by the about 300 primary schoolers include Diversity Field, BAME Park, Rainbow Park, and of course, Diane Abbott Park. Now, I wouldn't necessarily class myself as a Diane Abbott fangirl, to put it very mildly. And in the spirit of Easter, however, there are some kind things I have to say about the Member of Parliament for Hackney and Stoke Newington. She came from very humble beginnings, worked hard to secure a place at Cambridge University as an adolescent, and then became the first black woman to ever be elected to the British Parliament. That is no mean feat. She is, I suppose you could say, extraordinary in her own peculiar way, at least. But here's my issue with all of this. According to The Telegraph, which has seen internal documents relating to this review, pupils were first given a briefing on systemic racism and George Floyd by a race expert before being asked to choose a new name for Gladstone Park. And get this, it's purported that pupils as young as 5 suggested the park be named after Diane Abbott. Come off it. We weren't born yesterday. There is absolutely no way primary school children are coming up with this stuff by themselves. It's not that I think they're not bright enough to think about social issues. Some of them are. But I have a 7-year-old daughter. In fact, I brought her to work today. She's backstage. And I consider her a mature, rather intellectual 7-year-old, although I would say that, wouldn't I? But even then, I guarantee you that the only thing she's concerned about right now, as I speak, is what colour gel pen she's going to use to colour in her drawing. Her biggest worry in life right now is probably her favourite coloured felt tip pen running out of ink. And so it should be. I can assure you she's not and has never, of her own volition, sat around worrying about systemic racism, global prejudice and injustice. And she certainly has no clue who Diane Abbott or William Gladstone are, let alone advocating for a local park to be renamed after Diane Abbott in light of BLM protests. I put it to the people leading this review that what they are doing is manipulating young children in order to influence the outcome of this review. Some would say it's shameful to change the name of a park named after a 4-time Prime Minister upon his death in honour of his memory and his contributions to the UK political and social life to that of a, with respect, far less prominent political figure who has never even served on the front benches in government in her 35-year political career. But using children as puppets to achieve those blatantly political ideological ends, well, that's utterly shameless.
I mean, Diane Abbott Park, really? It's just bonkers, isn't it? There's a load to unpack there. The idea these children came up with it themselves, the idea they need to be taught about systemic racism when renaming a park, the idea that of all of the things in the world, you would rename a park after Diane Abbott, presumably for services to maths.
No comment. Well, I mean, look, I hate to add... I know some people will accuse me of adding to the barrage of hate that Diane Abbott gets by making this point, because they love to point out she's the most abused member of Parliament.
How do you quantify that, though?
Well, I think somebody did a piece of research and saw, like, Twitter abuse, whatever. OK, I get it, she gets a lot of stick. Some would say in many instances... you know, she did say Chairman Mao did more good than harm. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, so that's inviting a bit of hatred. So she's not the best quality MP I think they have. Obviously, it's just because she's the first black parliamentarian ever in British history. But I just don't like all of this. I mean, it's not like, you know, we're talking about some obscure slave trader that was, you know, an evil sort of character in history. Yes, William Gladstone had some questionable views, but he's 4-time Prime Minister, for God's sake. Yeah. Like, well, no, I hardly a comparison for Diane Abbott, is he?
No, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering what Diane Abbott Park would really look like. Do you think, you know, the gates open at 9:11 every single day, and then you go in and the slide's broken, and, you know...
You're only allowed in if you're wearing two left shoes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No, I think that's just a massive picture of Mao in the play area as well. But, no, I just find it astonishing, really. And it is a bit of an indoctrination towards our children, isn't it, as well? And I like you said, I refuse to believe that a class of 5-year-olds have come up with Diane Abbott Park, really.
Diversity Fields.
Diversity Fields, what was it? Rainbow Bame Park or something. I mean, come on, it's sickening, isn't it? It's absolutely sickening stuff. But anyway, also, are we going to... Your daughter's backstage, we're going to get her on air at some point?
Well, maybe.
Yeah? I think we should.
If she doesn't reveal my secrets.
Yeah. No, well, maybe we'll see if we can get a sneak peek of your daughter on air at some point. But anyway, moving on. Senior ministers have hit back at the Archbishop of Canterbury after he used an Easter Sunday service to attack the government's asylum.
Yes, well, the new plan would see tens of thousands, apparently, of migrants come to the UK, or who come to the UK through irregular routes, of course, like that Channel route, given a one-way ticket to Rwanda to claim asylum there. Well, in his intervention, the Archbishop Justin Welby branded the strategy, quote, opposite to the nature of God.
Yeah, well, the sentiment was echoed by the Archbishop of York, who said the policy was depressing and distressing. Well, joining us now is Claire Pearsall, former Special Advisor to the Immigration Minister and Conservative Councillor for Ash and New Ash Green. Lovely stuff. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Look, I suppose the argument is that the Archbishop of Canterbury just shouldn't be talking about these kind of things during an Easter service.
Well, no, I disagree. I think he actually should be talking about these things. I think one problem is with the Church of England is that they seem not relevant to the majority of this country. And if they sit in the House of Lords, as they do, and have a vote on our legislation, then surely we should understand what their position is. Now, that's not to say that they should be slamming the government at every opportunity, and I don't suspect that they would. But I think it's important for them to hold views so that we as the general public can see whether the church is indeed relevant for us and whether religion still has a part to play in our constitution.
I understand the point that the Church of England should, many would say, speak about social issues. I mean, fundamentally, I suppose some would say Jesus did a lot of social good and they have to speak about social issues if they're to speak about what they think that Jesus did and his acts in the world. But it's one thing doing that and it's another taking what is a blatantly ideological, political policy position. Should they be doing that part?
No, they shouldn't. It's one thing to have your point, but also I think that we need to expand this argument out by saying, OK, this is your point. What is your solution? Because that does seem to be half of the problem, is that there are many critics to any part of government policy, but not necessarily any ideas about how they would solve it. So I actually think this could be the start of something which is much better for the United Kingdom in actually bringing all these views together, coming up with solutions and actually arguing it out. You could, in fact, now find, Justin Welby coming onto your show to defend the views that he made in one of his sermons. And I don't think that is a bad thing.
No, I do think that he should have been potentially a bit more honest, though, because if his own personal view, as I strongly suspect that it is that essentially we shouldn't really have borders and that anyone who wants to should be allowed to come into the country, then that will be clouding his judgment on this or certainly influencing it. And I didn't like... So I'm not a member of the Church of England, that's not the denomination that I come from, but if I was a member of the Church of England and I backed this government policy now, I've essentially been called, been implied anyway, that I'm in some way ungodly for having that view, and I don't really think that's fair. But I mean, just in terms of the actual practicalities of this policy, do you think it's inhumane?
I think inhumane has been bandied around quite a lot. I think the plan is actually unworkable for many, many reasons. And it's quite interesting today to see headlines out that one of the back deals that has been done by the Home Secretary is to receive vulnerable Congolese refugees from Rwanda into the United Kingdom. Now, these could be victims of modern slavery, for trafficking, with extra health needs that will be coming over. So I think that we've been slightly missold what this package is about, which is always the problem when you announce something across a bank holiday weekend, nobody's had a chance to look at the detail. So I think it's going to fall apart all by itself. But largely, I think it's unworkable. You could argue that Rwanda is up and coming and therefore they will have a better life there than sitting around, just waiting in the United Kingdom for a decision to be made. So I think inhumane has been used far too loosely. But these details need to come out, and I think we will see those in the next few days. And I think, as I say, this plan will unravel before our eyes.
And why do you think it will unravel? Do you mean unravel as in it will fall apart, or more will become more aware of certain elements of it?
I think it's a little bit of both. We will become aware of more elements, just such as this detail today about taking in the Congolese refugees. You wonder what other deals have been signed alongside that to make sure this memorandum of understanding has been signed by both countries. So there will be that. But I also think the legal challenge, the cost aspect, and just the pure practicalities of getting these people across to Rwanda will become more apparent. We've seen that more small boats have come across the channel this weekend because the weather is good. I'm not convinced that it's going to have the deterrent effect that some people say it is. And it will cost more in the long run, just as the Australian government found out to their peril when they tried it with Papua New Guinea.
I suppose what they're hoping for is that there's an initial outlay of costs followed by that deterrence, and therefore, hopefully, I suppose, they will be wanting to not send that many people over to Rwanda, therefore limiting the cost. But, of course, all of this remains to be seen, doesn't it? I did think one interesting element of this particular plan that I don't think has got enough traction in the media was this life in prison for anyone piloting one of these boats. Now, the assumption there is, well, it's incorrect, really, because, you know, it's not like... This isn't an Uber service for illegal immigrants, is it, where there's a people smuggler driving the boat? These are normally just one of the people on that boat. And I thought that was actually quite an interesting potential deterrent anyway. And, you know, whether or not the people who get on that boat, the person who's driving it when it gets to Dover or whatever, finds himself with life in prison, I would have thought that's a significant deterrent, isn't it?
Well, it is, as long as it actually works. Now, I'm not sure that we will ever see somebody prosecuted for that, because by the time they reach the shores of Dover, I should imagine they will scatter out of a boat, and it would be very difficult to prove who indeed was driving it at the time or sailing it at the time. I'm quite in favour of harsher penalties for people traffickers. But they're not crossing the channel. They're not on the beaches. They have done their job. They've taken their money. They've provided a boat and they have disappeared. So we need to be chasing those people a lot harder, because as soon as you crack down on those organised criminal activities, then you will see this trade dry up.
And I do also think, you know, look, it's not like me to ever try to stick it to the French. Of course, I would never do such a thing. But Boris Johnson did make it relatively clear that the French were not playing ball pretty much with anything, and that, therefore, the idea of closer cooperation with our near neighbours over there, friends, of course, was not possible, and therefore it had to be an alternative solution, and this is that. And so, you know, should people be pointing the finger a bit at Emmanuel Macron as well when it comes to this, if they don't like this policy?
I think a lot of people are pointing the finger at Emmanuel Macron. His attention has been largely upon his own set of elections for some time. So he's not really helped us out. But I think the relationship between both countries has been hampered for many years. It's not a new thing that the UK and France are slightly at war with each other. And it's always a war of words as to who's going to back down. I think that we do need greater cooperation. We have to have that, whether people like it or not, whether we're friends or not. Both countries are impacted by these migrants crossing the channel. And whether we like it or not, we have to work together. We have to be a little bit grown up about this and stop fighting and make this stop.
Look, thank you very, very much for your time and for joining us here on To The Point. That's Claire Pearsall there, former Special Advisor to Immigration Minister and, of course, Conservative Councillor for Ash and New Ash Green. Great to have you on the show. Well, there we go. OK, after the break, a poll from Opinion found 27% of minority ethnic workers said their employers had introduced new initiatives during the last 12 months in response to the global inclusivity movement.
Yes, well, we'll be asking, has there been a meaningful response to the protests, or are diversity and inclusion initiatives a bunch of bull?
Right, well, we'll find out after the break. And the UK is looking bright for many of us, with a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. Southwest England will see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers through Easter Monday morning, and it'll be feeling fresher, with temperatures reaching around 13 degrees Celsius. There'll be plenty of sunshine and dry weather for the London area and the southeast of England, with temperatures reaching 14 degrees Celsius by lunchtime. Practically tropical, isn't it? Wales will also see a mixture of sunny spells and showers. These could be very heavy towards the coast, feeling pleasant in the sunshine, though. And over we go now to the Midlands, and it will be mostly dry, but for a few light showers are possible, and mainly they will be located around the Birmingham area. Temperatures rising a little above average for this time of year. Showers in northern England, no shock there, is it, this morning? And on the heavy side from time to time, in between, there will be plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant with light winds. And up we go now to Orkney and Shetland, which will see some early rain. Otherwise, much of Scotland will be bathed in sunshine, but there will be the odd shower. Breezy in the north and west. And off we pop now to Northern Ireland. A brighter day for Northern Ireland compared to yesterday. There will be plenty of sunny spells, but also the risk of some showers too. Highs of around 12 degrees Celsius. Through the day, most places will stay bright, but further scattered showers are possible. It'll be breezy in the northwest.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Very good Easter Monday morning to you. It's 11:26 and this is To The Point with Patrick Christys and me, Mercy Moroki, on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
We certainly are. Now, new research shows the number of employers implementing new diversity and inclusion drives has almost trebled since the end of the Black Lives Matter protest. So a poll from Opinion found that 27% of minority ethnic workers said their employers had introduced new initiatives during the last 12 months in response to improved diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Yes, well, in 2020, 73% of minority ethnic people said they had experienced discrimination in one poll. But this year is the first time that figure has dropped to 64%. Oh. So let's pick this apart a little bit. Joining us now is Remi Adekoya, who's Associate Lecturer of Politics at the University of York and author of A Different Way on Race. Welcome to the programme, Remi. Thanks for joining us. When people hear diversity and inclusion these days, it's almost... It's become tainted, hasn't it? Because people think of all these schemes that sort of promote unconscious bias training and really quite meaningless, insubstantial programmes. Are there diversity and inclusion programmes that actually make substantive change?
I do think there are, and it's important that in the poll, I think half of the ethnic minority respondents said their companies or institutions they worked for had taken some action to tackle racism, and so they definitely perceive positive things as going on there. 27%, as you said, talked about the fact that there have been, new diversity initiatives in that company, and very importantly, you cited the statistic that said ethnic minorities report a reduced level of discrimination in their workplaces. So there's certainly things that are working. One thing which I think is very important and which a lot of people appreciate are mentoring schemes, which are now becoming increasingly popular in corporations. So generally speaking, the situation has been that the upper operations do tend to be underrepresented if we're speaking of ethnic minorities. And so a lot of the ethnic minority staff will tend to be in the junior positions or in the middle management positions, and they don't really feel they have contact with the senior staff in the organizations. And right now, a lot of organizations are introducing mentoring schemes, whereas some of the senior staff, who do tend to be white, will mentor an ethnic minority staff, for instance. And that's really helpful, apart from giving people, hope that they can also reach those kinds of positions. They also learn practical skills from those people. So this is one scheme which I think is really appreciated among ethnic minority staff.
It says here that in 2020, 73%, so 3/4 roughly, of minority ethnic people said they had experienced discrimination. I'm assuming that might be in the workplace. I'm not sure. If it is in the workplace, I'm not really sure I buy that figure, which is, I suppose, controversial to say. But I, of course, know many ethnic minority people. And many of the ones I know, I think they feel there is an over-exaggeration or an oversensitivity when it comes to what is perceived as discrimination. For example, somebody mispronouncing their name can be seen as discrimination when to many people that's not discrimination. So do you think that some of this stuff is overblown, shall we say it sometimes?
So everything depends, obviously, on individual cases, and people interpret things very differently. Generally speaking, there is a tendency for minorities, all sorts of minorities, not just racial minorities or ethnic minorities or religious minorities, for all minorities in societies to be sensitive to instances of perceived discrimination. Okay, and this applies to religious minorities in the Middle East, and this applies to, like I said, all sorts of minorities anywhere in the world. And it also, of course, applies to racial minorities living here in the UK. And so, of course, there is going to be that increased sensitivity to situations that can be interpreted as discriminatory. And so something which I may, for instance, not see as an instance of discrimination, because I may be assuming good intentions on the part of whoever is speaking to me, may be interpreted by someone else differently. So there's a lot at play here. There is that minority factor at play here, and there is also, personal psychology at play here, and there are, of course, also personal experiences at play here. Because if you have experienced racism in the past, then you are, of course, going to be more sensitive to it in the future.
Absolutely. Now, I've regularly spoken on very similar topics to this with various different ethnic minorities, people from various different ethnic minority backgrounds, I should say. And there is a concern sometimes from some of those people that there can be a bit of tokenism involved when it comes to things like this, right? So you can end up in a situation where people will be thinking, well, hang on a minute, have they got that promotion on their own merit, or is it part of some new scheme? And that's a really sad situation to be in, isn't it, really? And almost undermines the whole thing. How do you feel about that? Do you think there is an element of tokenism going on at the moment in some areas?
Again, this, of course, varies, company to company. Situations will be different in companies and institutions. Everything depends on how those at the top are implementing these programs. And so if those at the top are simply looking for black or brown faces to put in somewhere so I can, tick a box and say, oh, look, I've done something for diversity, then of course we are going to have that kind of feeling in the institution, and it's going to end up to be counterproductive at the end of the day. However, if those at the top are not implementing it just based on that tokenistic sort of system or motivation, and people do see that, look, people being promoted are being promoted on merit, and in every organization and in every institution, you will find lots of ethnic minority people who are there because they deserve to be there and who deserve to be promoted, who work hard every day. And so, people see this. So I think, people are not really fooled by these kinds of things. So, people know their colleagues. They know how hard their colleagues work. They know which of their colleagues, are more competent, which are less competent. And so if the process is implemented in the proper way, then, everybody's going to see, look, this is fair, and things are working the way they should be.
Absolutely.
Well, Remy Adekoya, thank you so much for joining us. You were very clear and insightful there, Associate Lecturer of Politics at the University of York and author of A Different Way on Race.
Yes, indeed. Well, fascinating topic. Keep these views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, we'll be discussing Prince Charles's Easter address to pay tribute to Ukraine, and we'll be joined by our royal correspondent and, of course, as well, a former royal butler. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
It's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Home Secretary says critics of her plan to send migrants to Rwanda have failed to offer their own solutions. Writing a joint article in The Times with the Rwandan Foreign Minister, Priti Patel reiterated that her plans were bold and innovative. That's after the leader of the Church of England, Justin Welby, said the proposals were ungodly and raised serious ethical questions. The Prime Minister will face MPs in the Commons tomorrow in his first appearance since he and the Chancellor were fined for attending a gathering held in the Cabinet Room in June 2020 while coronavirus restrictions were in place. He's expected to urge MPs to move on from Partygate, insisting there are bigger issues to focus on. Russia has renewed its assault on western and southern regions in Ukraine. Lviv's mayor says at least 6 people have been killed after 5 missile strikes hit the city overnight. The country's deputy prime minister says for the second day in a row, no evacuation corridors have been opened. The final coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are going to be lifted today. People will no longer be legally required to wear face masks on public transport and in public spaces. From today, the rules move to guidance. Lateral flow tests will no longer be freely available, but will continue for health and social care workers and for those visiting vulnerable people in care homes or hospitals. Volunteers are being lined up to drive ambulances as part of a pilot scheme due to launch next month. The London Ambulance Service says volunteers will be trained and equipped to offer support with emergency calls in their area. Well, new figures last week show response times and A&E performance in England has dropped to its lowest levels on record. You're up to date on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. You're watching GB News. Shortly, we'll be back to The Point.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning all, it's 11:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, now Prince Charles used his Easter address yesterday to pay tribute to the millions of Ukrainians forced to flee their homes following Russia's invasion, saying he was heartbroken by their plight.
Indeed, well, it came as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, along with their children, Prince George and, of course, Princess Charlotte, led members of the royal family for the annual Easter Sunday service at Windsor Castle. Well, for more on this now is our royal reporter, the wonderful Cameron Walker, who joins us in the studio. Morning, Cameron. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
For hot-footing it in. So it's been a busy weekend for some members of the royal family, hasn't it?
It certainly has. We had the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge there, as you just said, leading the annual Easter Sunday service. They were joined by the Earl and Countess of Wessex, their children, and also less senior members of the royal family. Notable absentees, though. We didn't have Prince Charles, we didn't have Camilla, and also we did not have Her Majesty the Queen, something which we know Her Majesty the Queen is very religious and has attended every year for a very, very long time. And this year we found out last week that she would not be attending.
OK, all right, and that's age-related, I suppose, is it, as far as we're aware? Or...
We're assuming it's age-related, and we know for a fact she's got mobility issues as well. So I think they're trying to prioritise which events she attends.
No, absolutely.
And I've been seeing a few things in the headlines as well over the last few days about Harry and Meghan, who have decided to fly out of America for once and attend an event, show their faces.
Yes, it's the first time the couple have been seen in public in Europe since they left and became, not senior working members of the royal family anymore. They're attending Prince Harry's Invictus Games in The Hague, in the Netherlands. And do you know what? It's seeing the old Prince Harry again. I think it's, he's supporting veterans. He's doing something that he does best. He served 2 tours of Afghanistan himself. He's very much at home talking and supporting injured veterans. So yeah, it's not kind of complaining, not doing his usual complaining as we've seen in the last couple of years with the Oprah interview, and we know we've got a big autobiography he's got coming up in the autumn as well. So this is something which he's doing well and doing best.
I was reading the reports of it over the weekend actually, and look, in the past, for example, outlets like the Daily Mail, of course, have been notably critical of Harry and Meghan. In fact, most outlets have. The coverage was pretty good. The coverage was pretty positive for them.
Yeah, it has been pretty good, but they're doing it very much on their terms this time. The last Invictus Games was 2019, when there were still working members of the royal family. So everything was done to the royal family's protocol. Now, of course, they're doing it on their own terms. They have a Netflix crew following them at the moment. They've signed a multi-million-pound deal. And you see it, actually. The camera crew that Netflix has is very, very close to Harry and Meghan. Everybody else is behind a very big fence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you see it. And now photographers are starting to take photographs of the Netflix crew as well. Of course, they are totally free to do that. They're no longer working members of the royal family. They are not bound by strict protocols, and they are making their own way in the world.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, do we have any ideas about when we can expect this hot Netflix documentary or whatever it's going to be, series? We're all waiting for it.
I don't think we've got a date yet, but we know very much that obviously they've been filming at the Invictus Games. There are rumours that perhaps they filmed in the UK when they visited the Queen last week, but there is no confirmation of that and nothing to suggest that is the case. But I think we've got a little bit longer to wait yet to actually see the footage.
The suspense will be building. It will be palpable.
Yeah,
I might explode with excitement.
Well, something tells me, despite the fact everybody's complaining about them, we'll probably end up watching it and probably end up making them a lot more richer than they are. So win-win for them, I guess.
We're part of the problem. Cameron, thank you very much, as always. Cameron Walker there, our royal correspondent. Right now, joining us to give us a bit more on the royal family is Grant Harold. So he's a former royal butler to Prince Charles, Prince William and Prince Harry. Thank you very much for joining us, Grant. Great to have you on the show. So, look, I suppose, what do you make of the non-attendance, you could say, by Charles and the Queen at this particular ceremony? I think we've understood the Queen's absence potentially, but not necessarily Charles and Camilla's.
Good morning, Mercy, Patrick. Thanks for on the show. You're quite right. It's quite a different Easter service, wasn't it? When you saw the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge leading other members of the junior, can I say, or less senior members of the royal family into the church, was very different to previous years at Sandringham, where you'd have the Queen, the late Prince Philip, with senior members of the royal family. So it's very different. But again, it's a sign of times are changing, and obviously the Queen. due to mobility was not there. And Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall, from what I understand, I think it's been reported that they're possibly having a private Easter up in Scotland, which does not surprise me because in the past they have gone up there. Even when I worked for them, that was quite the kind of norm. But I think it just shows how the royal family is changing, and the younger generation is now very much kind of starting to take the lead.
Can I pry a bit into your life, please? Because I've always been really fascinated by the role that you used to do. And look, we've had our royal correspondent on there, whizzing us through some of the facts about non-attendance, attendance, and that's what we've asked you as well. But I want to know what your day-to-day routine was like when you were a royal butler. Are you allowed to tell me, or are you NDA'd to the max?
I always say to people, I hate to break the illusion. It's not quite like Downton Abbey. I mean, there's parts of a butler's role that's exactly as you imagine, looking after the family, looking after guests. But, there's bits that you don't get to kind of see and I love telling people about those kind of experiences, which is everything from, being invited to different parties and balls and events with members of the royal family. I was even at Prince Charles's wedding to the Duchess of Cornwall. I was at Prince Harry's wedding. I've even danced with the Queen at Balmoral Castle. So again, these are not the things you imagine a royal butler to actually do, but I've been quite lucky and fortunate. Those are some of the experiences that I've had.
Can I just ask, did you ever make a mistake? Did you ever do anything a little bit embarrassing? You didn't spill tea on the Queen or something?
No, the most embarrassing thing I ever did was royal protocol. I didn't know what to do when you met royals for the first time, and I remember I think it was my first week working as a butler for the Prince Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, and we were odd enough in Scotland, and I didn't know what to do. I remember seeing them at the end of this corridor, and I panicked and I dived into a cupboard, as you do. Unfortunately, it was a storage cupboard, and I remember going in. It was tiny. There was no lights. The door slammed behind me. I reached out and I could just feel all there was different supplies and I think glasses and things all round about. And I thought they'll never know. Surely they'll never know that I'm in a supply cupboard kind of thing. And I could hear them outside the door question what on earth I was doing in this cupboard. So I managed to kind of walk very calmly, but Carson would be so proud. I walked out very calmly. I didn't make eye contact. I saw there was a door opposite, praying it's not another cupboard, and then it was a staircase. And at which point I looked at them, said, "Good morning, Your Royal Highnesses," nodded my head and carried on. And apparently, I know they found this hysterical because later on during breakfast, you could hear them giggling away at the fact that their newest butler dived into a cupboard because he didn't know royal protocol.
This is fantastic.
That is great.
This is fantastic, absolutely. And and look, just lastly, really, I mean, have you got a best memory from your time there? Is there one standout memory for you?
I think it's got to be with the Queen because, everyone's talking about her mobility being an issue for her today, which is really sad. And that's why I think we're seeing less and less of her. And I'm just praying that it is a short thing and that eventually that we will see her carrying on as normal. But therefore, one of my best memories is Dancing with the Queen, which was a dream as a child. I watched one of the many documentaries that have obviously been over the years. And there was a scene where the Queen was dancing at Balmoral Castle with other members of the family. And I said to my late father, "How do you do that?" And he said, "You marry for them or you work for them." I did think about who I could marry, and I did rule that out, obviously, and decided I'll work for them. And of course, that came true. And amazingly, within about 12 years from watching that programme, I was in Balmoral Castle dancing with the Queen, and I think that's going to be a very treasured memory because I'm guessing going forward she probably doesn't sadly do much dancing, so I'm one of the lucky few that have had that honour of dancing with the Queen.
Oh, and what an honour indeed! Yes, I think anybody who would have that memory it will surely be the best memory that they'd take with them to the grave, I suppose, because you don't get much better and more romantic. And
you've got us all. It's a bit dusty in here now, mate. That's the thing. You managed to make us well up a bit, but look, thank you very, very much, and we'll have to talk to you again very soon. And
absolutely, my pleasure.
I think you should definitely, if you've not already, you should definitely write a book. But thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on the show. Brilliant stuff. Well, there we go. What an insight that was from Grant Harold, former butler to the royal family. Gosh,
I think you need a butler. Just to do basic life things.
I think.
Yeah,
to describe it. Carer, probably not more so than a butler.
Yeah.
You know,
Could barely do your tie, for goodness sake.
Can barely do it, actually. Yeah, no, I've done it all right this morning.
I like that tie.
Yes, good.
Yeah,
well, that's
good
good.
tie.
It's a rare bit of positive comments about my attire.
Yep, like it.
Numerous critiques, of course, delivered by
What
you
mean?
and indeed the nation. Anyway, now, Easter is one of the most important celebrations in the Christian calendar. And away from all the chocolate eggs, many people use it as a time of reflection. Our reporter Anna Riley was speaking to the Archbishop of York about what Easter means to him.
Easter is central to the Christian faith and offers a message of new beginnings, as well as being a time for family, friends, rest and relaxation. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, leads the northern province of the Church of England. At York Minster, Stephen shared his Easter message of hope and rebirth, and his belief that with the ongoing war in Ukraine and a cost of living crisis, that the meaning of Easter is relevant now more than ever.
There is such horrors in our world. We've lived through 2 years of COVID. We're just coming out of it. And then we see, for the first time in most of our lifetimes, something we thought we would never see, war in Europe. The terrible, terrible invasion of Ukraine and all that's followed from that. We're seeing a cost of living crisis in our own country. There is a refugee crisis across the world. There is a climate emergency. These are huge things, and it's very, very easy to feel hopeless. The message of Easter, again, is a message that there is hope, that these things don't have the last word, that it's possible to live differently, to start again. And therefore I hope and pray that the message of Easter will speak into all these situations. First of all, for those in the greatest need and the greatest despair, knowing they're not alone, but for all of us to raise our sights and lift our vision.
The Archbishop thinks this is the point for Britain and the world to come together to support one another through dark times.
I want to live in a world where everyone has a decent wage and a decent income, and I'm really, really concerned for the poorest in our society, let alone across the world. And then, of course, I want to live in a country, I think we all do actually. It's amazing how British people want to welcome in Ukrainian refugees. There's been a huge outpouring of goodwill and welcome. That's good. I want to live in that sort of a country. But there are refugees from Yemen, refugees from Syria, in just as much need, fleeing similar conflict and violence. This could be a great wake-up call for our nation, in which we reset our compass to be better than we are at the moment.
And this is what people visiting York Minster said the meaning of Easter is for them.
Chance to start over, I think, but a bit like a clean slate. And everybody does New Year resolutions, but I think Easter's the time when you just think about what could have been, what might have been, and how you can make it better.
It's a time when the church really comes together to celebrate the resurrection.
Time off from regular routine.
It's a kind of a renewal, kind of a spiritual spring to me. Just trying to get back to spiritual beliefs and start over and start the year afresh.
It's about life, resurrection, new hope.
So, however you've spent the Easter break, here at the Minster there's a message of hope and unity for whatever the future may bring. Anna Riley, GB News, York.
Well, there we go, OK. Archbishop of York's been in the news rather a lot today. We've covered some of the remarks about the ungodliness, apparently, of our Rwandan asylum system, but there we are. But we're going to move away from that now because time is against us. So police officers are being told not to call people sir or madam under new guidelines to use gender-neutral forms of address.
Yes, well, new LGBT plus training for officers aims to advise them to avoid making assumptions about someone's gender. Hertfordshire Police said the LGBTQ plus community has faced huge discrimination and their officers have had their gender training. But ex-officer Harry Miller of the Fair Cop Free Speech campaign group said this is totally irrelevant to catching criminals, which it is, objectively.
It is, really. I mean, The police should have enough to think about, you know, if they've just got, you know, some kind of massive car chase, razzing it down the M1. They have to step in and do one of those tactical manoeuvres where they get someone out and then they get them on the floor and then apparently they have to think about not misgendering them.
Yeah, I mean, it's absurd.
I just find it bonkers, really.
Or they could misgender them to kind of rile them up after they've caught them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What, deliberately misgender
Just deliberately offend them.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, you could do.
That's another
And
way.
then what, just give them a little zap of the taser and we can all go home happy. Is that
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think you'd make a good police officer?
Yes, I can move tough when I want to. Do you think?
I just don't think I would deal well with all of the other elements of policing, you know, like... It's a tough job. It's a dirty job sometimes. You know, you're dealing with a lot of... You see the very worst of people, don't you?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Whenever I watch these police programmes, especially when it's about catching sex offenders, and sometimes they have to pretend to be younger. And I just think, how can you... Some of the stuff they have to sit through, I mean, they must really need long hours of therapy.
They probably
after some of the stuff they witness. I mean, and turning up to things like murders and things like that, probably not for me on the second thought.
That might be quite, you know... not cool, as it were, but like that side of the job. That's like the true crime stuff, whereas, we're having to sit through and, you know, sit through images of horrible abuse. I don't think I could do that. I certainly wouldn't want to, anyway. Right, now, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed. So, a senior British Transport Police officer is calling for people who express inappropriate or unhealthy sexual behaviour on the tube to be prosecuted.
Yes, well, Detective Superintendent Sarah White warned that even staring at somebody could suggest someone is thinking about a sexual behaviour, and it needs to be reported. Well, last month, TfL launched a campaign aimed at protecting women and girls from common examples of harassment, including upskirting and catcalling. Last year, rape cases soared over 61,000, which was a new record in England and Wales, whilst reported sex offences rose by 8%.
Well, clearly something needs to be done.
Do you know what? I, for the first time the other day, did text the British Transport Police because there was I won't go into the detail of it, but a man was offering me what looked like illegal substances. A very creepy man sat next to me, offering me alcohol. I'm a grown woman, so I can handle that kind of thing. But I thought, this man, what if I was a 15-year-old girl and here he is, trying to offer me? And I texted them, and they sent me back a bog-standard response, like, if this offence is taking place right now to you, go online and fill out this form. Like, who can be bothered to do that?
Exactly.
So it's almost like, OK, well, even if you report these kinds of things, not that I'd ever report staring, for God's sake, but... you know, there are some things worth reporting, and I don't even think they'd take them very seriously even then.
Absolutely. All right, well, we've got time for just one more, I think. Surveys from Lloyds Pharmacy have found that a majority of women would be in favour of a male contraceptive, but admitted that they wouldn't trust the men to take it.
Yes, well, it turns out they have a reason to, because another poll by Lloyds Pharmacy found that more than half of British men say they would refuse to take a male contraceptive if they were to become available. Currently, 1/3 of women in the UK take a form of oral contraceptive, so a pill.
Yeah, I'm a bit hypocritical on this, massively hypocritical on this, actually, because I feel very weird about, you know, switching it off, just in case it doesn't come back.
Yeah, that's a worry.
We've got Gloria De Piero, by the way, who's back off on her hollybobs. He's on the other side of the studio, howling with laughter at the moment. I think there's a lot of blokes out there that feel the same way.
but what about women? Why is it all
I know,
on
but that's
women
why I said I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, exactly. Just as long as we acknowledge that there is massive hypocrisy in that for men expressing concerns about what the pill might do to them if they take it. Well, we have to have the same concerns as well.
But you're used.
We have to carry the children. We have to carry the damn things afterwards.
Yeah, OK, all right, well, there we go. Anyway, right, ladies and gents, this Wednesday, the 20th of April, we need your help. We are, once again, handing over the show to you.
Yes, we want you to tell us what to talk about, including male contraception.
Yeah, no doubt we'll be revisiting that one.
What you think are the most important stories. It was a massive success last week. Thank you for everybody getting in touch, and we're doing it again this week. So email in to thepoint@gbviews.uk. That's tothepoint@gbnews.uk. Tell us what you want us to talk about. Post some questions to us. Who do you want to see us talking about? And we'll try our best to do that.
Absolutely. Well, that's it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away, because up next, it's a glorious return, the briefing with Gloria De Piero. Stay tuned. And the UK is looking bright for many of us, with a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. Southwest England will see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers through Easter Monday morning, and it'll be feeling fresher with temperatures reaching around 13 degrees Celsius. There'll be plenty of sunshine and dry weather for the London area and the southeast of England, with temperatures reaching 14 degrees Celsius by lunchtime. Practically tropical, isn't it? Wales will also see a mixture of sunny spells and showers. These could be very heavy towards the coast, feeling pleasant in the sunshine though. And over we go now to the Midlands, and it will be mostly dry, but for a few light showers are possible, and mainly they will be located around the Birmingham area. Temperatures rising a little above average for this time of year. Showers in northern England, no shock there, is it, this morning? And on the heavy side from time to time, in between there will be plenty of sunshine, feeling pleasant with light winds. And up we go now to Orkney and Shetland, which will see some early rain. Otherwise, much of Scotland will be bathed in sunshine, but there will be the odd shower. Breezy in the north and west. And off we pop now to Northern Ireland. A brighter day for Northern Ireland compared to yesterday. There will be plenty of sunny spells, but also the risk of some showers too. Highs of around 12 degrees Celsius. Through the day, most places will stay bright, but further scattered showers are possible. It'll be breezy in the northwest.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday.